How's everybody doing? How's the Western Conservative Summit going? It is great to see so many of you here tonight. It is great and an honor to be here with you. I've enjoyed coming to this each and every year, and I just truly appreciate the chance to be with you tonight. And I got to tell you something. I had this incredible experience yesterday. We're in Washington, D.C., voting in the Senate. It's 100 degrees outside. It's 100% humidity, at least that's what it felt like. And then you come back to Colorado, and as Ryan Zinke said, it is God's country, and we are grateful for it. Wasn't Secretary Zinke great? You know, I knew he was here. I knew he was here because I saw his horse tied up out front. I knew he was here. We're very grateful that he's here. I just hope that you gave him a very strong message, and that's simply this. There's something that I've been trying to pursue a little bit, and he's going to help us out with, I'm pretty sure. I would like to make sure that the Bureau of Land Management headquarters leaves Washington, D.C. and relocates itself to Grand Junction, Colorado. So, Secretary Zinke, I don't know if you're still here, but we would love to have you do that. You know, I'm here with my wife, Jamie, tonight. Our children, Allison, Thatcher, and Caitlin are here. I heard Katie give that great introduction. And I do live in this little tiny town of Yuma, Colorado. For those of you who aren't from Colorado, it's the place that the weatherman stands in front of on the newscast. It's out by Kansas. Hardly anybody knows where it is. But our son, he's 5.5. Our youngest daughter, she's 2.5. And our oldest, she's 13. And, you know, our 5.5, he's getting more interested in politics. He's getting more interested in public policy and what's happening around him. And the other day, he was talking about some of the things that he was hearing on the radio. A TV commercial or a radio commercial went on, and it was talking about money or finances. And pretty soon he said something, well, Mommy, that's free. And Jamie thought, well, this is a good opportunity to share that, you know, really things aren't free. And that they do have costs associated with them. And so she said, you know what, Thatcher, things do cost. Things aren't free. In fact, the only thing that's free in life are love and hugs. To which point our son said, well, yeah, Mommy, except for the buy one, get things free things. The free things are free. So it's going to be a while before he's reading Hayek, but we're working on him. I had this incredible privilege yesterday of meeting with two incredible individuals in my office yesterday. A gentleman named Lauren Bruner. Gentleman named Donald Stratton. Now, some of you may know who these men are, but for those of you who don't, they are two of the 5 survivors of the USS Arizona from December 7th, 1941. They were in my office yesterday because they are still fighting one last incredible fight. Because the gentleman who saved their lives, a gentleman named Joe George, was never recognized for the act that saved those 2 and 4 others from that burning, listing USS Arizona. In fact, the story goes that Joe George, as he was piloting this ship named the Vestal toward the USS Arizona as it's tipped over, and Donald Stratton, he lives in Colorado Springs, he was at that very front tower of the USS Arizona that you remember from your history books that you've seen. He was in that tower. He was on fire. He was burning. He was heading out. And Joe George was given an order, cut the rope. And Joe George disobeyed a direct order. And he threw a line to the USS Arizona, and 6 men shimmied across that line. Hands burnt. Bodies burnt. They shimmied across that line, and he saved their lives. And so today they were at the White House to talk to the President of the United States about recognizing Joe George for that act of heroism. There are men and women in this room, though, who have stood up on the front lines of freedom time and time again for this nation. And we are grateful for your service. We are indebted to you. Several weeks ago, I had a meeting with Secretary Tillerson at the State Department. And prior to the meeting, we were looking at some of the rooms there in the diplomatic reception area. And there was this grandfather clock that stood in the diplomatic reception room at the State Department, and it was an old clock, and the history was written in a little plaque right by the clock, and it said this was a clock that was built in America's earliest years. The very first days this clock was built, it was built in the 1740s by an American clockmaker. It was in the homes of patriots, our forefathers, men and women over the last 200 years who listened to that clock, count the hours, tick the seconds, mark the time. And as I was sitting there with Secretary Tillerson, I heard that clock chime 12 strokes for noon. But I wondered how many times in the past 200 years plus, 200 plus years of that clock's history, had it counted the time marked so slowly during times of conflict and war. Whose house was that clock in during the Revolutionary War, during the Civil War? What note did it strike during World War II, the Vietnam War? And were the people who were listening to that clock, did the people who were reading the face of that timepiece, did they ever think that it struck midnight for our country? Or did they always have the confidence that no matter what time of day or night this country would move forward, would move on? We face great challenges in this nation, tremendous struggles, because we are a great nation that faces tough times. But we know that we can continue to do good things. And you know what? Those two gentlemen from World War II, my guess is they'd be grateful that people can express their voices in this room tonight so that they can be heard, because that is what America is about. The voices of the people, to be heard, to be listened to. That's what makes a nation great, is the strength of each other to listen to the disparate voices, to listen to the people who have differing opinions, because that is what makes our nation strong. That is who we are. And those are the values that the Western Conservative Summit celebrates. Over the past 7 months, we have repealed $87 billion worth of regulations at the federal level. We have wiped out 54 million hours of paperwork off the backs of American families and businesses. And we have done everything that we can to make sure that we rebuild a failed foreign policy from 8 years of destruction under President Obama. Because when red lines are written in disappearing ink, the United States is weaker, and so are our allies. And together, we will make sure that we regain the strength, that freedom's foothold around the globe as a great nation. Next week, we are going to address the issue of health care in this country. And I note there are people here in this room who have very, very serious concerns about where that health care debate goes, as they have a very important stake in this debate. And that's why I've enjoyed having over 400 meetings this past several months with people from around the state to discuss health care. To some of the very people who are with us tonight, to make sure that we focus our health care efforts on those who need it the most. Because what has happened over the past several years is a government that has tried to grow so much that it's created instability in our most important safety net programs. And what we have to do is make sure that they are sustainable to protect those who are truly in need. In Colorado, 500,000 people had their health insurance plans canceled over the last several years. People across this country were promised that their health insurance rates would decrease by $2,500 a family. Remember that promise. But instead, the average American has seen their health insurance increase by over 105%. A broken promise. We've seen people who were promised they could keep their doctor if they wanted their doctor, but they lost their doctor. A broken promise. And what we have to do is we have to make sure that we can rebuild a healthcare system in this country that increases the quality of care, decreases the cost of care, and does it by giving consumers more choice, more options, and more freedom. And that we give the states flexibility they need to design a program that works best for them. To get Washington out of the way. To make sure that states can do what they know is best for their citizens. Those are the kinds of things that we can all work together to do. We need to make sure that we rein in the overrunning regulations that have destroyed so much of our economic opportunity over the last 8 years. We need to make sure that we pass legislation like the REINS Act to make sure that Congress has the power to check runaway federal agencies and bureaucracies. We need to make sure that we place judges on the federal court who won't make the law, but who will be guardians of the law. And we will make sure that whether it's the federal bench in Colorado, the federal bench across this great land, that the kind of men and women who will be confirmed by the United States Senate to serve in our court will be like Justice Neil Gorsuch. Over the next several weeks, we will turn from a healthcare debate upon making sure that we build a better system to tax reform, to cutting taxes from the highest corporate tax rate in the world so that we can grow this economy and start putting men and women back into better paying jobs so that they don't have to be reliant on safety net programs anymore. Look at the great state of Colorado. 2.3% unemployment. But not every part of this state shares in that same kind of opportunity. If you live in the eastern plains of Colorado where agriculture is struggling right now, if you live in the western slope of Colorado where the coal mines have been silent for too long, they haven't shared in that same economic growth. We know we can do better in this nation, and we know we must. And so over the coming months, we'll turn to tax reform. We'll turn to those ideas that we know can restore the greatness of this nation. The people in this room tonight, the people at the Western Conservative Summit, you are freedom's foot soldiers. Men and women who understand what it takes to make this country great, to continue the greatness of this nation, to make sure that those voices who disagree aren't ignored. They warmly embrace them through policies that empower the individual, not the government over the people. You know, it was years ago, some of you have heard me tell this story, a couple years ago now, that my grandfather passed away. And we were going through his house. My grandmother and grandfather were pretty much pack rats. They kept everything they ever had. And we were looking for some memorabilia to share with the family at that time. And we came across a shoebox that was filled with letters that he had written to his mom and dad during World War II, his time in Soissons, France. And those two gentlemen in my office yesterday, Lauren Bruner and Donald Stratton, those two veterans of World War II, reminded me of his story that was written in this letter. You see, this letter was dated August 15th, 1945, and for those of you who are students of history, you know why this date is important. The first sentence of his letter read like this. It said, "Aha! Last night at midnight, the rumors were confirmed. The war is over. There is peace at last. I said a silent prayer and know that I will be home with you soon." For those of you who have stood on the front lines of freedom for this country, you've held those silent prayers through battlefields and training, through long deployments and long phone calls with your families away from home. You know what it's like to share in that fight for freedom. And we will always be grateful for those men and women who have done that. But to Granddad, to Donald Stratton, to Lauren Bruner, to the men and women in this room, there was a question posed to all of us by John Adams hundreds of years ago that said this: will future generations of Americans deserve the freedoms that we have fought for? It's no doubt, after getting to know people like them, people like you, that the answer to John Adams' question will always be an unequivocal yes. Every American deserves the freedoms and liberties that this nation was founded on, that people have fought for, that people have died for, and that people today around the globe are standing up for. The conversations we have tonight in this room and tomorrow and the next day, this can't be it. We can't stop this conversation. We're here tonight not just because we know there are people who may believe in the same things we believe in. There's people here tonight because they know somebody who came and they wanted to go to a nice dinner and a nice event with nice speeches. But you're here for more than that. You're here because we know we have a fight ahead of us for the values of our country, for the greatness of this nation, to make sure that we uphold the promises to generations past and in the future. And so over the next several days, I hope that you leave this summit with an invigorated spirit, knowing that this nation truly is blessed, knowing that God has given this world something special in the United States of America. The Western Conservative Summit, the Centennial Institute, to its great founders like Bill Armstrong, to Jeff Hunt and John Andrews, thanks for making this possible. Thanks for being a part of this. And to all of you at the Western Conservative Summit, there's more work to be done. And in 2018, we're going to stand that work together. And we're going to make sure that wherever my granddad is, wherever your loved ones are, they will know that the United States stands stronger, bolder, and greater than ever. Thank you, Western Conservative Summit, and God bless. Thank you. Thank you.